was standing there, empty-handed. When I looked up, my roommate had a look in her eyes that said, "Please, don't kill me." Had I not seen the evidence myself, the soap dish originally in my hand shattered across the floor, I wouldn't have believed her. I was 20 years old, a triple major college student, successful, and with a trajectory of a bright and hopeful future. At least that's what my advisors said. But nonetheless, I found myself in crisis. And you would think the most offensive thing about my story was the fact that my roommate looked at me like I was a monster. But it wasn't. What offended me most was that I was educated and found myself in the midst of crisis with no idea what to do about it. What is crisis? Simplified, it's an external stimulus or stressor like divorce, losing a job, losing someone you love, a child or loved one becoming terminally ill unexpectedly. And it's when that unpredictable stimulus or stressor is read by your thalamus as a threat. And that threat triggers the more commonly known process called fight or flight. Which is funny, not haha, that we're talking about fight or flight, because me being a multifaceted crisis survivor, I can tell you what it feels like every time I've undergone a crisis. It feels like I've been dropped in the middle of a war zone with no gun, no vehicle, and no training of where to go. And whether you've been in the military or not, it is common knowledge that it is disgustingly risky to put your life in the hands of a trial and error process. But unfortunately, that's what we do in crisis. So this is what my trial and error process looked like. I picked a therapist. One of my majors in college was psychology, so I thought, why not? The trial quickly turned into error because it wasn't one or two therapists before I saw a reduction in my symptoms, but it wasn't until I got to the 12th therapist that I found someone that fit and actually helped me get on the other side of my crisis. That's a problem. One person every 40 seconds dies to suicide. Are you offended yet? But this is TED, and I'm not here just to talk about the problems. I'm here to give you an innovative solution. And it's simple: crisis management. I first learned about crisis management in the midst of my therapeutic process. When my ignorance became enlightened by the reality that going to a therapist wasn't going to solve all of my problems. It actually was just the start of my journey. You see, it was in that process I learned the incredible difference between crisis treatment and crisis management. You see, crisis treatment is professionally driven. So lucky me, I ended up in the office of a therapist who is a professional. I am a type A, very motivated, very driven individual. I want you to get how rare it is that I ended up in a therapist's office. And it's good. You know, crisis treatment is great because it's good to hold professionals accountable. And crisis treatment in nature is intervention. The reality is in order to receive crisis treatment, you must first be diagnosed for its service. But crisis management is incredibly different. Crisis management is personally driven. For instance, had I known that just 3 weeks prior to my psychotic break, that every time after I completed my 10-mile run, when my heart palpitated like, that was potentially a sign that I was in crisis and that I needed to seek the support of a professional, then I would have went. But you know my story now, and you know that wasn't the case. You see, crisis management is prevention-driven, which means you must know what to do and where to go before crisis hits. But unfortunately, people in crisis are stuck in a perpetual trial and error process, and not everyone is making it out alive. Call me an idealist or even a dreamer, but a world that focused more on crisis management, pro-crisis management, would look like this. It would look like you, educator. Whether in elementary or middle school, high school, college, or grad, inviting an anti-stigma or crisis prevention educational program in and really making it normal for people to understand how common it is to find yourself in crisis and training them what to do about it so it becomes as common as calling 911 or a fire drill. Or you, business owner, inviting someone like me, I know, shameless plug, but I did start a business called Zion Crisis Navigational Services that is designed to help employees navigate through crisis so they can keep their jobs and also get to the other side of their crisis with dignity. Or you, restaurant owner, coming up with a meal plan where people who find themselves in crisis can maybe get a dish from their favorite restaurant and take the load off. Because if any of you have ever been in crisis, you know that some of the things you forget to do first is to eat, and to eat healthily. You see, crisis management isn't reinventing the wheel or asking for millions of dollars to be invested into our community. Au contraire. Crisis management is you being you, the educated, bringing that service back to our community, uniting and understanding that crisis happens to everybody. So join me and be the change we wish to be. Crisis management, the new community service. Thank you.